Imagine standing beneath a night sky so still, so silent, you can almost hear the earth breathe. Now imagine the ground beneath your feet whispering secrets, secrets not meant for us, secrets that rewrite everything we think we know about history. Because buried deep in geological layers, far older than human civilization, scientists have stumbled upon something utterly shocking. Microscopic spheres of rare metals fused in patterns identical to those produced by nuclear detonations. And here's the impossible twist. These strata are dated to 65 million years ago, long before us, long before civilization, long before humanity even existed. For as long as we've walked this planet, we've comforted ourselves with a narrative of uniqueness. We told ourselves we were the first to tame fire, the first to split atoms, the first to carve industry into the skin of the world, the first and only architects of technology. But what if that's nothing more than a self-serving illusion? What if Earth has hosted others before us, civilizations just as advanced, maybe even far beyond what we can currently imagine, whose traces lie crushed beneath continents, their cities ground into dust, their monuments erased by time, their stories dissolved into silence? The evidence is not neat, it's not obvious, it whispers instead of shouts. A strange isotope ratio in the rock, anomalous layers of carbon suggesting massive planet-wide burning, fossil gaps where flourishing ecosystems suddenly vanish. It's like stumbling upon ashes at the edge of a forest and realizing there was a fire, but no one remembers lighting it. These faint fingerprints hint at something astonishing, that perhaps humanity is not the pinnacle of creation, but simply the most recent chapter in an unimaginably long saga of rise and fall. And here is the truth that chills me most. If such a civilization did exist, the Earth itself is a master at burying its dead. Plate tectonics swallows continents whole. Oceans grind cities into sand. Climate shifts erase forests and deserts, turning ruins into fossils of fossils. After tens of millions of years, almost nothing recognizable would remain. If we were wiped out tomorrow, in 50 million years our skyscrapers would be gone, our satellites fallen, our bones scattered, our digital memories erased as though we never were. The Earth would heal, and the next arrivals, whoever they might be, would never know we once reached for the stars. So the question I bring to you tonight is this: are we truly the first technological civilization to call this world home? Or are we just the survivors of a cosmic relay race we didn't even know was happening? If the ground beneath us carries the remnants of forgotten fire, then the story of humanity is far stranger and far more fragile than we ever dared to believe. Let's pause and stare into the abyss of deep time, because this is where the human imagination falters. We think in centuries, maybe in millennia if we stretch ourselves, but the Earth thinks in millions, in billions of years. What seems eternal to us, a city, a nation, a civilization, vanishes in an instant on that cosmic clock. Rome fell only yesterday. The pyramids of Egypt were built just a heartbeat ago. And yet when we stretch further back, tens of millions of years, hundreds of millions, the slate is almost blank. That blankness is not because nothing happened. It is because time is merciless in its erasure. Here is the terrifying truth. If humanity were to disappear tonight, the fingerprints of our existence would fade shockingly fast. Within a few centuries, steel bridges would collapse, skyscrapers would tumble, satellites would burn back into the atmosphere. In a few tens of thousands of years, forests would reclaim suburbs, rivers would cut through highways, glaciers might bury entire regions. And in a million years, only the faintest geological scars, strange chemical imbalances, odd concentrations of plastic polymers, fossilized remains of a few bones, would whisper that we were ever here at all. Give it 10 million years, and even those whispers would fade to silence. Now stretch your mind further. 65 million years ago, the age of dinosaurs came to a violent end. We are told it was an asteroid, a colossal impact that darkened the skies, ignited global wildfires, and ended an era. But what if that narrative hides another story? What if there was not just an asteroid, but also something else, something artificial, something nuclear, that left behind the metallic spheres and isotopic fingerprints scientists now puzzle over? Could an ancient intelligence have fallen in fire, its final acts hidden beneath the same catastrophe that ended the reign of the reptiles? The fossil record is not complete. It is riddled with absences. Entire periods of life vanish without explanation, and in their place we find strange layers of carbon, anomalous minerals, sudden extinctions. Scientists call them events, and they are right too, for they are events of unimaginable scale. But what if some of those events were not accidents of nature, but the scars of civilizations we have long forgotten? The universe does not care who holds the torch of knowledge. It only cares that the flame is fleeting. We must face an unsettling possibility. Humanity's story is not unique, but cyclical. That we may not be pioneers, but inheritors. That Earth itself may be a graveyard of forgotten technologies, buried so deep we will never fully uncover them. And if this is true, if others once rose before us only to vanish without a trace, then the question is not simply whether we are the first, but whether we will be the last. When scientists dig into the rock layers of our planet, they expect to find the familiar: fossil shells, compressed plant matter, the imprints of ancient creatures. But every so often, something surfaces that does not fit the pattern. A seam of unusual carbon, a layer of metals fused as if by intense sudden heat. Ratios of isotopes that echo the signature of nuclear detonation. These are not the remnants of a slow geological process. They look more like the aftershocks of fire, fire hotter than any volcano, fire capable of altering matter itself. And here lies the mystery. Some of these anomalies date back tens of millions of years. They cannot be explained by humanity's brief industrial age, because we weren't there. The question then becomes, who or what was? The idea sounds like science fiction, the kind of tale whispered in pulp magazines or conspiracy forums. But here's the unsettling part. The evidence is physical. The Earth does not lie. It holds records of cataclysmic burning, of chemical scars so distinct they force us to ask questions we were never prepared to confront. Think about this. When we test nuclear weapons today, the Earth remembers. The fallout leaves fingerprints in soil, water, and stone that cannot be erased. Even if humanity vanished tomorrow, those radioactive signatures would persist far into the future. If some other intelligence had discovered atomic fire long before us, the traces would be almost identical to what we ourselves leave behind. So when geologists stumble upon metallic spheres that look exactly like fallout glass, or isotopic shifts that mirror the aftermath of radiation, should we really dismiss the possibility that someone else got there first? The fossil record adds even more intrigue. Entire species vanish abruptly, not slowly but violently, as if they were swept away in a storm of fire. Could that storm have been natural? Yes, asteroids, supervolcanoes, climate upheaval, but the timing, the isotopes, the anomalies, they whisper of other possibilities. What if these vanishings were not accidents of nature, but echoes of civilizations that burned too brightly and collapsed under the weight of their own power? This is where imagination collides with dread, because if someone else rose to greatness and fell before us, their story is not just a curiosity, it is a warning that technological power carries within it the seeds of annihilation. And if Earth has already buried one or more civilizations in its deep vaults of time, then history is not linear. It is cyclical: rise, burn, collapse, silence. The soil may carry their fingerprints, but the voices of those lost builders are gone. No myths, no monuments, no legends, only ash woven into stone, daring us to look closer, to see past our arrogance, to recognize that we may not be alone in the history of Earth, not the first, and not guaranteed to be the last. Walk into any desert canyon or mountain range, and you're greeted by walls of stone stacked in impossible layers. Each band of color is a chapter of Earth's memory, written not in ink, but in minerals. To us, these layers feel eternal, immovable, like the bones of the planet itself. Yet they are fragile records, rewritten constantly by floods, winds, quakes, and the grinding engines of tectonic plates. Entire continents shift. Oceans open and close. What once stood above sea level vanishes beneath crushing depths. The story of the Earth is a story of relentless erasure. If a civilization had thrived tens of millions of years ago, their monuments would not survive that erasure. Think of our own world. Skyscrapers, bridges, and highways, all impressive feats of human engineering, would crumble within mere centuries if left untended. Forests would claw back the land. Ice would grind the ruins into rubble. Within a million years, nothing recognizable would remain. Only chemical traces in soil and the faintest of fossilized remnants would persist. In 10 million years, even those whispers would fade into obscurity. In 65 million years, silence. That silence is what haunts the fossil record. We dig and expect to find continuity, but instead we find gaps. Entire ecosystems vanish overnight. Life restarts in sudden bursts, as if the planet hit reset. Science tells us these resets came from asteroids, volcanic winters, runaway climate shifts. But every so often the anomalies rise again. Isotopic signatures, unexplained carbon layers, fusion glass that should not be there. They're like faint voices carried through a static-filled transmission, fragments of a story erased but not entirely lost. And here's where it turns unsettling. If civilizations can vanish so completely that not even a whisper of their architecture remains, then absence is not proof of non-existence. It is simply the default outcome of time. That means the question isn't, could an ancient civilization have existed? But rather, how would we ever know for sure if one did? The stone does not volunteer its secrets easily. It is silent, patient, and merciless in its ability to bury all things. Yet even silence can be deceptive. Every trace of us, every light we shine into the cosmos, is temporary. The Earth will wipe it clean. The universe will not keep our records, which means the civilizations of the past, if they existed, are not gone because they were unworthy, but because time itself is the most perfect destroyer. So as we stand here, marveling at our own achievements, we must ask, are we building monuments to eternity, or only to the next few thousand years before the wind carries us away like all the others? If we are not the first, then history is not a straight line. It is a graveyard filled with echoes, and we are only the latest voice screaming into the silence of stone. Picture a book so vast it stretches back nearly 5 billion years, the geological record of Earth. Every page is written in stone, clay, and fossilized bone. But when you flip through this colossal archive, you find that entire chapters are smeared with ash, charred beyond recognition, as though the planet itself endured fires on a scale we can barely comprehend. These aren't gentle burns from seasonal wildfires. They are planet-wide infernos, recorded in blackened layers of carbon that stretch across continents. Scientists can explain some of them. Yes, asteroids can ignite forests on a global scale. Yes, volcanic eruptions can spew enough ash to darken skies and smother ecosystems. But when the ashes are paired with peculiar chemical signatures, unusual isotopes, metallic spheres fused by heat far hotter than any volcanic eruption, the story twists. The ashes look less like natural accidents and more like the residue of something deliberate, something technological. almost as if fire was once wielded, not endured. We see parallels in our own modern age. Nuclear detonations leave unmistakable scars in soil. Fossil fuel combustion lays down thick deposits of carbon, changing the chemistry of the atmosphere itself. Plastics, pesticides, and industrial byproducts seep into sediment, forming a chemical record that could persist for millions of years. If future beings studied Earth long after our disappearance, they would not find our skyscrapers or satellites, but they would find our ashes. They would see the carbon spike of the Industrial Revolution. They would detect the radioactive isotopes of nuclear testing. They would find the fingerprints of a species that burned too brightly. So when we look back 65 million years and see a sudden layer of soot and ash, paired with isotopes that should not exist naturally, what are we really seeing? Is it simply the fingerprint of a massive asteroid impact? Or is it a glimpse into the self-destruction of a civilization long forgotten, a civilization that reached for power and collapsed in fire? The ashes do not tell us who lit the match. They only tell us that the fire burned. And here's the haunting part. Even if we could prove it, even if we uncovered undeniable evidence that others came before us, their fate would stand as a warning carved in soot. Because the Earth is not sentimental. It remembers catastrophe, but not culture. It records destruction, but not dreams. The ashes in the stone tell us only one thing with absolute certainty. Fire has come before, and it can come again. So I ask you this. If the past is already littered with civilizations that turned themselves to ash, what makes us believe we are immune? What makes us think our story will be written any differently when the geological record of tomorrow is finally read? Every time we turn the pages of Earth's fossil record, we confront a chilling rhythm, life surging, thriving, then suddenly silenced. 5 great extinction events are etched into the stone of this planet. Each one a cataclysm that erased the dominant forms of life and cleared the stage for something new. We're told they were accidents of nature, a changing climate, a supervolcano, an asteroid from the void, and perhaps they were. But what if some of them carried another cause, hidden beneath layers of fire and time? Think about this. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, 65 million years ago, is infamous for ending the reign of the dinosaurs. A colossal asteroid struck, yes. The evidence is undeniable. But the story doesn't end with the rock from the sky. Across the globe, we find soot layers suggesting unimaginable wildfires. We find metals fused by intense unnatural heat. We find isotope ratios that mirror the residue of nuclear detonation. If the asteroid was the trigger, could something else have magnified the devastation? Could an advanced civilization of that era have already been playing with forces far beyond its control? Extinctions are often framed as clean slates. Life collapses, then slowly rebuilds. Mammals rise after reptiles fall. Humanity rises after countless others vanish. But is this a natural rhythm, or is it the cycle of civilizations? Rise, burn, collapse, reset. The stone does not say who lit the fire, only that the fire consumed. Even now our own age trembles on the brink of a potential 6th extinction. Climate upheaval, nuclear arsenals, biological risks, artificial intelligence running ahead of wisdom. We stand on the same cliff edge where others may have stood before us, staring into the abyss of our own undoing. If they too perished, their legacy is not a warning etched in words, but in silence, the silence of species gone forever. The unsettling thought is this: extinction does not need to be permanent for life itself, but for civilizations, for intelligence, for culture, it is absolute. If a species clever enough to split the atom once walked this earth and fell, then their extinction was final. Their stories, their art, their triumphs, all erased as though they never breathed. We only catch hints of their passing in the anomalies of stone and soot. So here's the question we must wrestle with. When we stare at the gaps in the fossil record, are we seeing only the cruelty of nature? Or are we staring at the tombstones of civilizations that came before us? Civilizations erased so thoroughly that we don't even know to mourn them? Let us be brutally honest about what we are up against when we try to read the deep past. Time itself is the most merciless assassin. We like to imagine that monuments last forever, that pyramids and skyscrapers will stand for eternity. But the truth is, they are fragile children in the face of geological forces. Wind, rain, frost, and tectonics dismantle stone, steel, and concrete with effortless patience. Oceans grind whole continents to sand. Volcanoes bury landscapes under molten fire, and given enough millions of years, every trace of us would vanish into anonymity. Think of New York City. In only a few centuries without humans, the skyline would collapse. Roots and vines would tear open the concrete. In just 10,000 years, rivers would carve through its bones, and glaciers could pulverize what's left into dust. In a million years, the iconic city would be a whisper in the rock layers. Extend that to 65 million years, and there would be no whisper at all. The Earth does not preserve civilizations, it consumes them. This is why the silence of deep time cannot be trusted as proof of absence. If an advanced culture lived and perished long before us, its ruins would not survive. Their satellites would have fallen, their machines would have corroded, their cities would have been folded back into the crust. Even their bones might not have endured. What would remain? At most, chemical scars, traces of metals arranged unnaturally, isotopes hinting at nuclear fire, faint anomalies in the fossil record. And that is exactly what we find. Now imagine this haunting scenario. Earth may have already hosted several cycles of intelligence, each one rising, each one mastering technology, each one eventually erased by time. If so, then humanity is not the author of a brand new story. We are only the latest voice in an ancient chorus. A chorus where every singer is eventually silenced, their verses scattered into the oblivion of geological time. The most frightening realization is that time is not only erasing the past, it is erasing our future too. Even if we survive for 1,000,000 more years, our civilization will one day be swallowed. What endures in the long run are not cultures, not histories, not even species. What endures is only the stone. So if the stone whispers to us of fire and extinction in the deep past, the question becomes urgent. Are we listening to the record of others who came before, or are we only hearing echoes of our own fate, projected backward through the cruel lens of time? If we accept that stone erases all but the faintest traces, then the hunt for ancient civilizations becomes a detective story written in whispers. We cannot expect to find skyscrapers petrified in bedrock or fossilized microchips waiting in the sand. What we must look for are the anomalies, those strange geological signatures that defy simple explanation. Scientists already do this, though often for other reasons. They examine isotope ratios in rocks, searching for signs of volcanic activity or ancient climates. They study layers of carbon to reconstruct prehistoric ecosystems. But sometimes, the data refuses to align with known natural processes. Ratios that look eerily similar to fallout from nuclear detonations, microscopic metallic spheres that match the byproducts of intense industrial burning, sediment spikes that echo the carbon overload of fossil fuel combustion. These anomalies are usually dismissed as quirks, folded into convenient natural explanations. Yet what if they are not quirks at all? What if they are the fingerprints of a vanished intelligence, smeared across the stone like the faint residue of a long-extinguished fire? The odds of stumbling upon direct proof, machinery, inscriptions, artifacts, after tens of millions of years are vanishingly small. But chemical anomalies? Those endure. They are the faint scars time cannot fully erase. Think about how future archaeologists, millions of years from now, might judge us. They would not find our cities, they would not find our satellites, but they would detect the sharp carbon spike of the Industrial Revolution. They would measure the radioactive trail left by our nuclear age. They would find layers of synthetic molecules, plastics, pesticides, industrial toxins, locked into sediment. Those would be their anomalies, their proof that someone had burned brightly here once before. So when we uncover similar anomalies in the deep past, why do we hesitate to ask the same question? Why do we insist they must be natural when they mirror so closely what our own industrial and nuclear activities create? Perhaps it is arrogance or fear, or the human tendency to cling to the belief that we are unique. But the Earth may be trying to tell us a different story, one buried in the anomalies that science prefers not to linger on. The pursuit of these whispers is not just academic, it is existential. If these anomalies truly mark the graves of civilizations older than ours, then they are not curiosities, they are warnings. They say, yes, intelligence can rise, yes, technology can flourish, but beware, the fire always burns itself out. And here is the cliffhanger question we must wrestle with. Are we uncovering the graves of others, or are we simply staring into a mirror, seeing the reflection of our own inevitable fate written in the anomalies of the past? Here's the dilemma that gnaws at the edges of this mystery. The very forces that make Earth habitable are the same forces that erase its history. Plate tectonics recycles the crust. Volcanoes spew new rock over the old. Oceans grind mountains into sand. Glaciers scrape continents clean. The planet is a relentless archivist, constantly rewriting its own book, destroying older pages to make room for new ones. And in this endless rewriting, civilizations, if they ever existed before ours, would be swallowed whole. So how do we prove the unprovable? How do we find evidence of something designed to vanish? The paradox is cruel. The longer a civilization lasts before collapsing, the less chance its traces will survive in the geological record. After a few million years, even nuclear waste decays into near invisibility. Plastics break down into microfragments that future geologists might mistake for natural sediments. Skyscrapers collapse, corrode, and are absorbed into the crust. If we want certainty, the record cannot provide it. Time has destroyed the smoking gun, and yet, the anomalies persist. The carbon spikes, the isotopic fingerprints, the peculiar distribution of fused minerals. These are the whispers of something more. They are not clean, not obvious, not enough to convince a skeptic, but they are there, nudging us to consider the possibility. Science demands caution, but curiosity demands boldness. And when anomalies echo our own destructive capabilities, should we really turn away from the question they raise? Consider this unsettling thought. If we were erased tomorrow, future beings studying Earth 65 million years from now would also argue about us. Some would claim we never existed. Others would point to strange isotopes, carbon spikes, and chemical traces and whisper, perhaps there was something more. They would never know our languages, our histories, our art, our struggles. They would know us only as a puzzle. That is exactly how we are forced to view the deep past, a puzzle with missing pieces and a story we can only guess at. The paradox of proof means we may never get the certainty we crave. But maybe the point isn't proof at all. Maybe the point is humility. Maybe it is the realization that the silence of the past does not guarantee uniqueness in the present. We may not be the first, and we are certainly not guaranteed to be the last. So the haunting question becomes, if we cannot prove the existence of those who came before us, does that make us safer, or does it make us more vulnerable, repeating their mistakes without even knowing it? Close your eyes and picture it, a world not unlike our own, but millions of years before a human ever walked the earth. Vast forests stretch across continents. Oceans teem with strange life. And somewhere in this alien yet familiar landscape, an intelligence awakens. They build, they learn, they reach for the atom, the stars, maybe even the very secrets of the universe itself. And then, like a match flaring too brightly, they vanish. These are the ghost civilizations. We don't know their names. We don't know their faces. We don't know their languages or myths. Time has devoured all of that. What we are left with are shadows, traces so faint they can barely be distinguished from the noise of natural processes. A carbon layer here, an isotope anomaly there, tiny glassy beads of metal fused by unimaginable heat scattered across ancient rock. That's all. And yet, for those willing to listen, those whispers are deafening. The chilling part is this. Ghost civilizations may not be the exception. They may be the rule. Intelligence could rise, fall, and vanish many times over on a single planet, with each cycle leaving only chemical echoes for the next to puzzle over. We may be standing not on the first peak of consciousness, but on the latest ridge in a long hidden mountain range of forgotten societies. Think about how fragile we really are. All our cities, satellites, and global networks feel eternal in the moment. But compared to deep time, they are as fleeting as sparks in a storm. 1,000 years from now, they may already be unrecognizable. 1,000,000 years from now, they will be gone. 65 million years from now, they would be indistinguishable from natural rock. If another species rose after us, they would wonder the same thing we wonder now. Were we alone in history, or just one more ghost civilization swallowed by time? And here lies the true terror. Ghost civilizations don't just haunt the past. They cast their shadow over our future. Because if others once built and burned before us, their disappearance isn't just a mystery. It's a warning, a pattern, a cycle. Rise, fire, silence, rise again. The earth forgets, but the ashes remain. So when we stare into those strange anomalies buried in stone, we aren't just asking whether someone came before us. We are asking whether someone will come after us, staring at the faint ashes we too will one day leave behind. Every civilization, no matter how brief, leaves behind a fingerprint. Ours is written in chemistry. Imagine peeling back the future layers of Earth's crust. What would they reveal about us? They would not show photographs or languages or monuments. They would show carbon, plastic, and radiation. These are the three pillars of our geological identity, the enduring scars of our industrial age. The carbon spike is the most obvious. Since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, we've burned fossil fuels at a scale the planet has never seen before. Coal, oil, and gas have released billions upon billions of tons of carbon into the air, thickening the atmosphere and embedding itself in soil and oceans. In millions of years, this will appear as a thin, dark band across the geological record, a carbon anomaly unlike any natural event. Future scientists, if any exist, will see it and wonder what strange force rewrote the planet's chemistry so suddenly. Then comes plastic, the ghost material. Plastic is not natural. It doesn't biodegrade in the same way organic compounds do. Instead, it breaks down into microfragments, embedding itself in ocean floors, in sediments, in the very air we breathe. 100 million years from now, if the world is excavated again, those tiny synthetic grains will still be there. Plastiglomerates, rocks fused with plastic, a new and unnatural stone created by us alone. They will endure as our strange signature, proof that an intelligent hand once molded the earth. And finally, the radioactive fingerprints. Every nuclear test we've detonated has left isotopic trails unlike anything in natural geology. Uranium and plutonium residues, cesium isotopes, fallout glass. Even if humanity disappears, these markers will linger for hundreds of thousands of years, some even stretching into the millions before decaying fully. They are the most undeniable traces of our power, and perhaps our folly. Now imagine flipping this in reverse. When geologists dig into the past and find odd isotopic ratios, strange fused spheres, or sudden carbon spikes, should we really dismiss them as purely natural? Or are we looking at the industrial fingerprints of ghost civilizations that came before us, fingerprints that look hauntingly like our own? Here's the terrifying symmetry. The anomalies we find in the past mirror exactly the anomalies we are leaving in the present, which forces us to ask a devastating question. If others once scarred the Earth with their own industrial fingerprints, did they too fall to the same fate we are flirting with now? Climate chaos, nuclear fire, or slow collapse under the weight of their own ambition? If carbon and plastic are humanity's fingerprints, then nuclear fire is our shadow. Nothing we've done has altered the planet more violently or more unmistakably than the splitting of the atom. Each detonation is a thunderclap in the geological record, searing glass into sand, scattering isotopes into soil, and leaving behind a signature that screams of intelligence. Nature doesn't do this, only technology does. Now here's the chilling part. When geologists study ancient strata, they sometimes encounter the same kind of residue, fused particles of rare metals, isotopic ratios that mimic fallout, minerals that should only form under conditions hotter than volcanoes. Our textbooks explain them away as asteroid impacts or extraordinary volcanic events. But what if those explanations are only half the story? What if buried within those layers are the scars of weapons fired not by nature, but by hands long gone? Consider this. If humanity vanished tomorrow, the radioactive fingerprints of our nuclear age would remain for hundreds of thousands of years. Even after the isotopes decayed, subtle anomalies would persist, detectable to anyone digging deep enough in the far future. The evidence would not say who we were. It would not reveal our language, our culture, our cities. It would say only this: someone here discovered fire so powerful it could unmake worlds, and then they disappeared. So when we find ancient anomalies that look suspiciously nuclear, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Could another species, long before mammals rose to dominance, have unlocked the same destructive forces? Could they have annihilated themselves in a storm of fire, leaving behind nothing but isotopic whispers to haunt us? The silence of the past is unsettling, but the symmetry with our present is terrifying. Because if nuclear fire consumed them, then we are standing in their shadow. The same shadow stretches over us now, as we sit atop stockpiles of weapons capable of turning the earth into glass in a single afternoon. If others once walked this road, we are marching in their footsteps. So here's the dreadful question that lingers. Are these nuclear echoes in ancient stone the tombstones of civilizations long forgotten? Or are they warnings, left behind like faint messages in the dirt, pleading with us not to follow the same path to oblivion? Imagine standing on ancient Earth 65 million years ago. The skies suddenly ignite. Forests burn from horizon to horizon. Oceans boil with falling fire. Entire species collapse in a matter of days. This is what the geological record tells us happened at the end of the Cretaceous. But here's the twist. What ignited those firestorms may not have been just a single asteroid. The rocks tell a story of soot, metal, and fused glass, a story that feels eerily familiar to our own nuclear age. Volcanoes can scorch the land. Asteroids can devastate ecosystems. But when we examine the chemical composition of certain ancient layers, we find signatures that neither volcanoes nor asteroids fully explain. Ratios of isotopes that mirror fallout. Microscopic spherules of fused metal identical to what appears after high-energy detonations. Layers of soot spread so evenly they suggest global burning, not just regional devastation. It's as though the planet itself endured a war, one not fought with swords or claws, but with forces that rivaled the stars. Now, let's leap forward to our own time. Every nuclear test conducted in the 20th century has left behind similar scars. Fallout glass, fused soil, radioactive isotopes drifting into rivers and settling into sediments. The Earth remembers each detonation. Even if humanity vanishes tomorrow, those markers will persist. And in 65 million years, they will look exactly like the anomalies we puzzle over today. So when we encounter the same kinds of scars buried deep in time, how do we interpret them? Were they born from natural catastrophe, or from civilizations that rose before us, burned too brightly, and fell into silence? The terror is not just in the possibility that others once unleashed nuclear fire. It's in the thought that we are replaying their story. We are stockpiling the same weapons. We are scorching our skies with carbon. We are writing our own extinction into the Earth's stone record, just as they might have written theirs. And here's the question that keeps me awake at night. If the firestorms of the past were warnings, not accidents, will we recognize them in time? Or are we fated to become just another layer of soot, another ghost civilization erased by the flames we ourselves ignite? The Earth has a cruel way of dealing with civilizations. Whether natural disaster strikes or whether a species destroys itself, the planet simply resets. Think of it like a cosmic hard drive that occasionally wipes itself clean. Life doesn't end. It reshapes, it reinvents, but whatever came before is erased almost completely, as if it had never been there at all. Take the Permian-Triassic extinction event, 250 million years ago. Geologists call it the Great Dying. More than 90% of marine life and 70% of land species vanished. Entire ecosystems were scoured from existence. To us, it reads like a natural apocalypse. Maybe volcanic eruptions poisoned the air. Maybe the climate shifted so violently that survival became impossible. But what if this event also buried something more? What if, hidden in that reset, there was the silencing of a civilization we will never know existed? Each mass extinction is both an ending and a beginning. After the dinosaurs fell, mammals surged forward. After the Permian collapse, new life forms crawled into dominance. But this cycle carries a terrifying implication. Civilizations may not get second chances. Species can repopulate, ecosystems can rebuild. But intelligence, complex technological culture, is fragile. It can vanish in a single generation and never return. If advanced beings lived before us, their fire died forever in those resets. And here's the sobering truth. Earth doesn't care who burns or who builds. It doesn't care who creates art, or who splits the atom, or who gazes at the stars. When the reset button is pressed, the story ends. All that remains is ash, stone, and silence. We are arrogant to believe we are immune, that somehow we will endure when everything before us has been swept away. Think about it. If humanity vanished tomorrow, the Earth would hit reset once again. New species would rise, forests would return, oceans would bloom with life. But our songs, our science, our monuments, those would vanish. And millions of years from now, if intelligence arose again, they might look at faint chemical anomalies in the rocks and ask the same questions we are asking now. Were they the first, or just another in a cycle of civilizations doomed to burn, fall, and be forgotten? So when we uncover strange markers in the ancient record, maybe they are not just curiosities. Maybe they are proof that the reset button has been pressed before, and that our time is ticking toward it once again. Civilizations are built on memory, stories, languages, art, and knowledge. All of it is passed from one generation to the next. Without that chain of memory, the thread of culture snaps. And when the thread snaps, the civilization itself dissolves. The terrifying truth is that memory is far more fragile than stone. You don't need millions of years to erase it. You only need a few hundred. Think of the Library of Alexandria. One fire, one moment of chaos, and centuries of human knowledge were reduced to ash. Entire philosophies, entire sciences gone forever. That was just 2,000 years ago. Now stretch that scale. Imagine if our entire civilization vanished tonight. How long before the memory of us is erased completely? 50 years? 100? Maybe a few centuries before languages fragment, books rot, and digital storage decays into unreadable static. Archaeologists of the far future would not find our myths. They would not find our songs. They would not know our names. They would find only faint chemical traces, just as we find in the deep past. That is the cruel joke of memory. It feels eternal, but it is vanishingly temporary. And if memory is this fragile for us, what about those who may have come before? If an advanced civilization rose tens of millions of years ago, their collective memory would have evaporated long before their physical traces were swallowed by time. Even if they left monuments, languages, libraries, or art, all of it would be gone. Not even ruins would remain, only silence. They would not just be forgotten, they would be unknowable. That's what makes this possibility so unsettling. If others came before us, their absence is not an accident. It's the natural outcome of how the Earth handles memory. Our planet doesn't preserve stories. It doesn't care about continuity. It cares only about survival, and in that brutal logic, memory is disposable. So when we look at ourselves and marvel at our intelligence, we must remember, memory is the weakest part of our legacy. The Earth will bury it. Time will dissolve it. And even if we touch the stars, if we fall, the silence will consume our story as thoroughly as it consumed theirs. The question is not just whether we will be remembered. The question is whether memory itself has ever truly survived any civilization at all. If the Earth is merciless at erasing memory, then perhaps the universe itself might hold the faintest echoes, not in stone, not in fossils, but in the very radiation that fills the cosmos. The cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang, is like a tapestry of the universe's earliest moments. Scientists study it for clues about inflation, dark matter, and the structure of space-time itself. But what if advanced civilizations, long before us, left their fingerprints not on Earth, but imprinted into the fabric of the cosmos? Imagine a civilization so advanced that their energy use bent the very physics around them. A society tapping into black holes, harnessing stars, manipulating quantum fields. The aftershocks of their experiments, their cosmic scale technologies, might ripple into the background radiation, leaving anomalies we still puzzle over today. Small fluctuations, strange cold spots, mysterious alignments in the data. We explain them with models of physics, but what if some are the scars of intelligence written on the largest canvas possible? Even closer to home, civilizations before us may have stretched their ambitions beyond Earth. If they launched probes, built orbital habitats, or seeded technology into space, fragments could remain. But cosmic radiation, micrometeorite impacts, and orbital decay erase even those traces across millions of years. Satellites fall, space stations disintegrate, moonscapes grind down into dust. The silence spreads outward, and yet, when we turn our telescopes skyward, we are looking for anomalies in the same way geologists do on Earth. Unusual spectra, light curves that don't match natural stars, signals buried in noise. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence isn't just about alien civilizations scattered across the galaxy. It's also, perhaps, about detecting echoes of our own planet's forgotten past, reflected in the cosmos itself. Here's the haunting symmetry. We assume we are the first to reach for the stars. But if ghost civilizations once walked Earth, perhaps they too stared upward. Perhaps they too wondered if they were alone. Perhaps they too sent their questions into the void. Their signals, if they ever existed, have long since faded into static. And one day, ours will too. So the real question becomes this: are the anomalies we see in the cosmic microwave background and in the strange signals of space just natural quirks of physics? Or are they faint echoes of civilizations, erased not only from Earth, but from the memory of the stars themselves? Every anomaly, every strange layer of soot or isotopic fingerprint is more than a mystery. It's a message, a warning carved not in words, but in ash. The Earth does not speak in stories, it speaks in scars, and those scars tell us that power and destruction often walk hand in hand. Think of what our own record looks like already. A dark carbon band marking the Industrial Revolution. Synthetic molecules embedded in sediments where no natural process could create them. Fallout isotopes spread across every corner of the globe, from deserts to deep oceans. If humanity fell tomorrow, these would be our monuments. Not the Statue of Liberty, not the Great Wall, not the pyramids. Our monuments would be chemical scars in the soil, proof that we mastered fire, and proof that fire almost mastered us. Now look back at the ancient anomalies, carbon spikes, metallic spheres, nuclear-like isotopes. They mirror our own. It's as though the past is holding up a mirror, forcing us to see our reflection in its silence. The Earth is whispering, "You are not unique. You are repeating the cycle. You are walking a road already traveled." And here's the devastating realization. If civilizations before us fell, it wasn't because they lacked brilliance. It wasn't because they didn't reach heights of power. It was because power itself became their undoing. They burned too hot. They reached too far. And in the end, the only thing they left behind was ash to warn the next arrivals. We are standing at that same precipice now. Climate collapse looms. Nuclear fire lurks in our arsenals. Technologies outpace our wisdom. The same dangers that may have ended them are arrayed before us. The only difference is whether we will recognize the lesson in time. So when we study the geological record, we are not just digging into history. We are staring into a prophecy, and the prophecy is clear. Civilizations are fragile, and the line between brilliance and annihilation is razor thin. The haunting question is not just whether others fell before us. It is whether we are wise enough to read the warnings they left behind, or whether we will add our own ashes to the record, one more scar in a cycle of rise and ruin. Everywhere we look in the cosmos, we see life's raw materials, organic molecules drifting in interstellar clouds, oceans hiding beneath icy crusts, exoplanets orbiting in habitable zones. The ingredients are not rare. Life, it seems, is eager to emerge. But intelligence? That spark is different. That spark is fragile. It flickers only occasionally, and when it burns too bright, it risks consuming itself. Here on Earth, it took nearly 4 billion years for that spark to ignite in us. And already, in only a few thousand years of civilization, we have pushed ourselves to the brink of collapse. Nuclear weapons, climate upheaval, pandemics, artificial intelligence racing ahead of wisdom. If intelligence is this self-destructive, then maybe that explains the silence of the cosmos. Not because no one else exists, but because they don't endure long enough to be heard. This is where the idea of ghost civilizations becomes more than speculation. If intelligence is fragile, then maybe Earth has already hosted it more than once. Perhaps others rose before us, but like candles in a storm, they burned out before their light could spread beyond this world. They never had time to leave messages in the stars, only scars in the soil. Think of what it takes to preserve a spark, not just technology, but wisdom. Not just knowledge, but restraint. Any species clever enough to split the atom also holds the power to end itself. Any culture advanced enough to alter a climate can also destabilize its own foundation. Intelligence carries its own shadow, and if it cannot master that shadow, it extinguishes itself. We often imagine intelligence as destiny, as the inevitable crown of evolution. But what if it is not a crown? What if it is a dangerous experiment the universe runs over and over again, on Earth, on other worlds, And almost every time the experiment fails, the spark ignites, the fire grows, and then it collapses into silence. That silence is what we are listening to when we scan the stars and find nothing. Not proof of emptiness, not proof we are alone, but proof that the spark of intelligence is fleeting, fragile, and often fatal. The real question is not whether life is common, it almost certainly is. The real question is whether intelligence can ever last long enough to escape its own shadow, and that brings us back to us. If Earth has already burned through more than one spark, if ghost civilizations really did exist before us, then we are not just inheritors of the planet. We are inheritors of their unfinished struggle. The burden is on us to prove that intelligence can survive its own fire. When we aim our radio telescopes at the heavens, we are not just listening for alien voices. We are listening for the survival of intelligence itself. Every silent sweep across the cosmos raises the same haunting question: where is everyone? This is the Fermi paradox in its rawest form. In a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars, with countless planets swirling in habitable zones, why does the night sky remain mute? The easy answer is distance. Signals fade. Civilizations may be too far away, too brief, or too unlike us to be heard. But there's another possibility, one far darker. The silence isn't because no one tries to speak. The silence is because intelligence rarely survives long enough to be heard. Civilizations rise, but they fall just as quickly. Their signals fade into static. Their monuments crumble. Their stars look no different than the rest. And what if this silence is not just galactic, but local? What if Earth itself has already hosted voices that never carried beyond the stratosphere? If ancient civilizations burned themselves into extinction before leaving the cradle, then their silence would echo even louder. They never reached the stars. They never built a legacy beyond the soil. They left behind only anomalies, fossil whispers, isotopic scars, while the universe erased their signals. We must face a chilling possibility. The silence of the stars and the silence of the Earth may be the same silence. A pattern, a cycle. Intelligence arises, it flourishes, it self-destructs, and then the cosmos grows quiet again. The night sky doesn't speak, not because it is empty, but because it is littered with civilizations that burned out before their voices could reach us. Now imagine this from another perspective. If, millions of years from now, another intelligence rises on Earth and turns its gaze outward, what will they hear? They won't hear us. By then, our signals will have long since dissipated into meaningless static. The silence they encounter will be the silence we left behind, the same silence we now puzzle over. So perhaps the silence between the stars is not an absence, but a graveyard of civilizations that, like us, reached for the heavens but collapsed before they could hold on. And if that is true, then every quiet star we see tonight is not just a question mark. It is a warning. History as we tell it feels like progress. We imagine a straight line, fire to wheel, wheel to steam, steam to electricity, electricity to stars. But the deeper we stare into Earth's ancient record, the more that comforting narrative shatters. The anomalies, the ashes, the isotopic scars, they suggest something else. A cycle, a pattern etched not in myth, but in geology. Rise, fire, collapse, silence. And then, somehow, the spark reignites. Consider how fragile our own ascent has been. For nearly 200,000 years, humans lived as hunters and gatherers. Civilization as we know it, cities, writing, science, is only 6,000 years old. Industrial technology, barely 300 years. Nuclear fire, just under a century. In cosmic terms, we are newborns, infants playing with matches in a dry forest. Yet already we hold the power to end not just ourselves, but countless other species with us. If others rose before us, they may have followed the same arc. a slow climb from survival to dominance, a breathtaking leap into technology. And then, the fall, maybe through war, maybe through environmental collapse, maybe through hubris that outpaced wisdom. However it happened, the cycle reset, and time swallowed the evidence. The unsettling symmetry is this: the very forces that propel a civilization upward are the same forces that drag it down. Fire gave us warmth but also weapons. Industry gave us abundance but also poisoned skies. Nuclear science gave us energy but also the means for extinction. Intelligence carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. And here's the cruelest part. Earth does not care how many times the cycle has played out. It forgets, it erases, it starts again. If there were civilizations before us, their stories are gone. If there will be civilizations after us, they will never know we existed. Each cycle believes it is the first. Each cycle burns. Each cycle is erased. So the question becomes unavoidable. Are we destined to be just another verse in this tragic refrain, or can we finally break the cycle? Can intelligence learn not just to rise, but to endure? If the Earth hides its secrets anywhere, it is beneath the oceans. More than 70% of our planet is covered in water, and beneath those endless blue plains lies the most complete archive of geological history. Sediments drift down, layer after layer, sealing records of fire, climate, and catastrophe in perfect chronological order. And yet, most of it remains untouched, unexplored, unread. Think about this. We've mapped the surfaces of Mars and the Moon more thoroughly than our own ocean floors. The Mariana Trench, deeper than Mount Everest is tall, remains as alien to us as the far side of Pluto. Which means if traces of ancient civilizations exist, they might not be in the crumbling ruins of mountains or deserts. They might be entombed in seabeds, protected by miles of water, buried under layers of sediment too thick for erosion or wind to disturb. Scientists drilling into deep ocean cores have already discovered shocking things: evidence of asteroid impacts, signatures of mass extinctions, sudden spikes in carbon levels, even glassy spherules formed by heat so intense it fused minerals into tiny droplets. These are the fingerprints of catastrophe, preserved better beneath the seas than anywhere on land. And among them lie the same unsettling anomalies: isotope ratios that hint at unnatural origins, chemical shifts that mirror the scars of industrial fire. Now imagine what else might be hidden down there: the collapsed remains of coastal cities, swallowed when tectonic shifts or rising seas reclaimed the land. Industrial zones erased from the surface, but fossilized in seafloor layers. Even whole civilizations drowned by floods and buried so deeply that no human eye will ever see them again. The oceans are both archivist and executioner. They preserve traces in their sediments, but they also crush and conceal with merciless efficiency. If advanced societies thrived millions of years ago, the oceans may hold their last remaining whispers, locked in cores of mud and stone that no one has yet touched. And here is the terrifying realization: we are only just beginning to scratch at this archive. For every anomaly we've uncovered, countless others may still lie buried beneath the abyss, waiting, silent, untouched. Proof that we are not the first, or proof that we are fated to be the next. So the haunting question is this: when we finally uncover the ocean's full story, will it reveal that humanity is alone in its rise, or will it show us the drowned tombstones of civilizations lost to time and tide? Civilizations are not just lost to stone and sea, they are lost to forgetting. Human history itself is proof of how fragile memory can be. We think of the past 5,000 years as clear and documented, yet even within that short window, entire cultures have disappeared into obscurity. Ancient cities lie buried under sand. Languages once spoken by millions are now dead whispers. Empires that ruled continents are remembered only through fragments of pottery and half-deciphered texts. If we can forget our own civilizations in mere millennia, how arrogant is it to believe we could remember any trace of something from 65 million years ago? The great forgetting is not just a quirk of time, it is a law. Stories fade, records burn, oral traditions fracture. Knowledge collapses when it is not continuously renewed. Imagine, then, if a technological civilization existed long before us. Even if they endured for tens of thousands of years, even if they mastered science beyond our comprehension, their memory would not survive the cataclysm that ended them. Their libraries would rot, their digital archives would corrode, their monuments would erode, and after millions of years, not even myths would remain. They would not just be forgotten, they would be unknowable. And the scariest part? We may be walking the same road. Right now, in the 21st century, we imagine our cloud storage and servers as eternal vaults of knowledge. But remove the electricity for just a few decades, and those vaults vanish. Paper fades, stone erodes. Digital code dissolves into silence. If humanity collapsed tomorrow, within centuries our memory would crumble, and in a few thousand years no trace of our stories would remain. This is the true danger of the great forgetting. It ensures that each civilization believes itself to be the first. Without memory, there is no continuity. Without continuity, there is no warning. Each intelligence rises blind, unaware of the ones who came before, doomed to repeat their mistakes. So when we look at the silence of the past, maybe it isn't silence at all. Maybe it is the sound of memory itself collapsing over and over again, erasing the voices of those who once reached for the stars. Every civilization faces a dangerous illusion, the belief that its greatness will last forever. Ancient Egypt thought the pyramids would stand as eternal guardians of their power. The Roman Empire believed its dominion would never crumble. Even in our modern world, we speak of progress as if it were unstoppable, as if the arc of history bends inevitably towards survival. But history laughs at such arrogance. Every empire falls, every culture collapses, every golden age ends. Now scale that lesson beyond history into prehistory. If ghost civilizations once thrived millions of years ago, they too must have fallen victim to hubris. Perhaps they believed their mastery of energy, technology, or nature made them invincible. Perhaps they thought they had transcended extinction. And yet, if the anomalies we see in Earth's strata are truly their fingerprints, then their hubris was shattered. Their towers turned to ash. Their brilliance was buried under stone. Here is the cruel paradox. Intelligence brings power, but power breeds overconfidence. The smarter a civilization becomes, the easier it is to believe it can outwit disaster. To think climate can be controlled indefinitely. To think war can be won without consequence. To think resources are infinite, but hubris blinds. It convinces a species that it is immune to the very forces that shape the world before it. We can see this shadow looming in our own time. We imagine ourselves destined to colonize Mars, to harness fusion, to spread among the stars. And maybe we will, but at the same time, our oceans rise. Our atmosphere warms, our arsenals grow deadlier. We are as vulnerable as any civilization before us, and yet we talk as though collapse could never happen here. This is the temptation of hubris. It lures us into forgetting that intelligence is fragile, that survival requires humility as much as ingenuity. If ghost civilizations did exist, their silence is proof that they too believed in their permanence, right up until the moment they vanished. So here is the cliffhanger we must wrestle with. Are we wise enough to learn from silence, to see hubris for the trap it is? Or are we destined to march forward blind, convinced of our own eternity, until we too become just another anomaly in the stone? When we search for traces of lost civilizations, we usually keep our eyes fixed on Earth. But what if we are looking in the wrong place? What if the real archives of forgotten intelligence lie just beyond our atmosphere, on Mars? Mars is a frozen desert now, scarred by dust storms and canyons deeper than any on Earth. But billions of years ago, it was different. Rivers carved valleys, lakes shimmered in basins. There may have been oceans spread across its northern plains. If life had a chance to rise anywhere else in our solar system, Mars was a contender. And if intelligence ever evolved on Earth millions of years before us, could they have reached Mars? Could they have left traces on a world less geologically restless than our own? Unlike Earth, Mars has no plate tectonics to recycle its surface. Its landscapes, once shaped, endure for billions of years. A structure, a machine, even fragments of technology buried beneath dust could last far longer than anything left on Earth's crust, which means if ghost civilizations once touched the stars, Mars might still hold their echoes. And here's where it gets eerie. Over the decades, images from rovers and orbiters have fueled speculation. Strange rock formations that look like ruins, peculiar alignments that resemble walls, shadows that mimic the outlines of machinery. Most are dismissed as pareidolia, our brains seeing patterns where none exist. But isn't that what we would expect? After millions of years, ruins wouldn't look like ruins anymore. They would look like rocks. The line between artifact and geology would blur until only the faintest clues remained. NASA and ESA missions have already drilled shallowly into Martian soil, searching for biosignatures. What if, one day, they stumble across something stranger, an alloy that shouldn't exist naturally, or isotopes that scream of technology, not geology? Would we even recognize it for what it is? Or would we dismiss it as an anomaly, just as we do with Earth's strange chemical scars? Mars may be the mirror that forces us to confront the truth. If ghost civilizations ever rose here or on Earth, the red planet could be their last resting place. A graveyard untouched by oceans, unaltered by tectonic fury, waiting for us to uncover its secrets. So the question becomes, when we finally dig deep enough on Mars, will we find the silent proof that intelligence is not unique? Or will the planet stare back at us with nothing but lifeless dust, leaving us haunted by what might have been? What if the mystery of ghost civilizations isn't confined to Earth at all? What if it stretches across realities themselves? Physics has long whispered of the multiverse, an endless sea of possible worlds, each with its own timeline, its own history, its own civilizations. If that is true, then perhaps ghost civilizations are not just buried in our planet's deep past, but alive in other universes, flickering just out of reach. Think about it. In one universe, humanity may never have risen, and dinosaurs still rule the continents. In another, an ancient species might have thrived for millions of years, mastering the stars and leaving trails of galaxies remade by their hand. In yet another, Earth may be littered with the ruins of societies we can only imagine, ruins preserved not in our reality, but in theirs. To us, these echoes appear only as strange mathematical patterns in quantum mechanics, or as unexplained alignments in cosmic data. But to them, those civilizations were as real as ours. This perspective reshapes the silence of our cosmos. Perhaps we are not alone, but the civilizations we seek are not here. They are shifted one reality over, their signals forever trapped on frequencies our universe does not broadcast. And if so, then our search for proof in the soil and the stars may be too limited. The anomalies we find, whether isotopes, carbon spikes, or cosmic cold spots, might be the shadows of multiversal bleed-through, hints that other timelines are brushing against ours. Now here's the haunting part. If civilizations in other universes also rise and fall, then the cycle of brilliance and collapse is not just an earthly tragedy. It is a multiversal law. Intelligence may bloom endlessly in infinite worlds, but almost always it burns itself out. Ghost civilizations do not haunt just our past. They haunt the fabric of reality itself. And here is the question that chills me most. If the multiverse is real, and if every possible history exists, then somewhere, in some version of Earth, our own collapse has already happened. Are we merely racing against a fate already written in infinite variations? Or is there still a path in this universe to break the cycle? Every road of inquiry, geology, astronomy, philosophy, leads us to the same unsettling conclusion. Civilizations do not endure. Whether they are erased by war, drowned by climate, buried beneath tectonic plates, or lost in the silence of the stars, their fate is always the same, oblivion. But does this mean intelligence itself is doomed? Or is there a way for a civilization, any civilization, to escape the cycle, to break free of the rise and fall rhythm that may have haunted Earth for millions of years? Survival requires more than technology. It requires restraint. A species must learn to hold fire without letting it consume them, to master energy without poisoning their world, to wield power without collapsing under the weight of hubris. This is not just science, it is philosophy. It is the recognition that brilliance without wisdom is self-destruction written in slow motion. Maybe that is the real lesson of ghost civilizations. Not that they once existed, but that they failed. Their ashes are not proof of greatness, but of fragility. And if we ignore that, we too will become a thin band of soot in the stone, a carbon spike, an isotopic scar for some distant future intelligence to puzzle over. We like to think of ourselves as permanent, but permanence is an illusion. The pyramids crumble, the satellites fall, the archives decay. In the end, what remains are the choices we make right now, choices that decide whether intelligence becomes a fleeting spark or an enduring flame. The terrifying possibility is that no civilization has ever succeeded, that intelligence, by its very nature, always destroys itself, that the silence of the cosmos is not emptiness but confirmation. No one escapes. And yet, there is also hope, because here we are, alive, aware of the danger, capable of seeing the cycle for what it is. Awareness is our advantage. Perhaps we can read the warnings in the stone. Perhaps we can learn where others may have failed. Perhaps we can be the first to endure, the first to stretch beyond the silence and carry intelligence into the deep future. So the final question is this: are we fated to be just another ghost civilization swallowed by time? Or can we prove that intelligence, once born, can outlive the fire that created it? We have walked through whispers in stone, shadows in the oceans, scars of firestorms, and the chilling silence of the stars. Every clue suggests that intelligence may not be a gift, but a trial, a test few, if any, have ever passed. If ghost civilizations existed, they failed the test. Their greatness burned away, leaving behind only anomalies, ash, and silence. Now it is our turn. Humanity stands on the edge of the same abyss. We hold fire in our hands: nuclear fire, industrial fire, technological fire, fire that can illuminate worlds or consume them, fire that can carry us to the stars or bury us in our own ruins. The geological record does not lie. The cycle is real. Civilizations rise. They fall. The earth forgets. The cosmos moves on. But here is the truth we must cling to. We are not powerless. We are the first species, as far as we know, to see the cycle clearly. We are the first to look into the silence and recognize it not as absence, but as warning. That awareness is our chance to break free. We can choose humility over hubris, stewardship over exploitation, endurance over collapse. The future is not guaranteed. In 10,000 years, our descendants may walk on alien worlds, carrying memory and wisdom across the stars. Or they may not exist at all, leaving behind only a thin line of carbon and plastic in Earth's crust. The choice is being made now, in every decision, every invention, every flame we kindle. The ghost civilizations, if they existed, cannot warn us directly. But their silence is enough. It tells us what happens if we follow their path. It dares us to write a different ending. So the final question is not whether we are alone in time. The final question is whether we will be remembered, or whether we too will vanish into silence, one more forgotten spark in the endless night.